Not a single word is said in this song by Ella Fitzgerald called Airmail Special. That's a wonderful example of her ability to scat, just make notes out of sound. That's wonderful. Accompanied by Oscar Peterson. They both have gone to the great beyond, but they left a body of work that we can still enjoy. This was taped at a Canadian telecast in 1961. This is Leid Stories. I'm Utrice Leid, and it is Free Your Mind Friday. All right, what's the purpose of Free Your Mind? Exactly that, just free your mind. There are things that are weighing on your mind. You've been following the news for the past week. And besides that, there are other issues that I'm sure you want to sound out. This is the place to do it. 888-874-4888 is the number to call. And free your mind. All right? I like the idea that people are becoming more and more accustomed, more and more used to expressing themselves. It's not important whether people agree or don't agree. It's important only that you make your case. And to the best of your ability, you take us from point A to the end, and we can follow your logic. And we, of course, there are people who will be listening and reacting to what you're saying. 888-874-4888. I just want to get you in front of something. Next week, there'll be a lot of news on the issues we've been covering here, particularly the Clinton Foundation. There's a lot happening with that. So by next week, I'm expecting that we will get some definitive word on what's up with that. All right, we start off with Ma'at from New York. Hello, Ma'at, you're on the air.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon and greetings to the beloved community.
Thank you.
I just want to clear up something that Jay misunderstood about the point or points I was trying to make. He thought I was saying impeachment now. What I was saying was that when I mentioned Jeffrey Toobin, who's one of the legal analysts, and you know they always pretty much conservatives start out with the worst case situation. When the situation with Michael Cohen came out about the fact that Trump had lied about not having any interest in Moscow, as he would actively pursuing a Moscow tower, and of course left himself to be blackmailed since he was lying to the world, and the Kremlin and Putin knew better. The point I was making is that when Tubin said that for the first time he thought that Trump might not finish his term, I don't think so much he was talking about impeachment, because he very well knew that the Senate, with those Republicans, if you will, wouldn't likely do that. And the other point I made about the author who wrote the book 100 Reasons to Impeach Trump and One Not to, I was talking about the one not to, and the one not to is Mike Pence. But my main point is what you were talking about yesterday. That was very, very crucial information, and I don't know whether you have it in front of you, but since I grew up in a certain area of the city, I want you to clarify, if not today, later, about the development coming up. You mentioned 150th or 155th Street near the Polo Grounds. Probably, is that Edgecombe you was talking about?
Yes, I don't happen to have the material right in front of me at the moment. I'm doing some cleaning here, so I'm shifting from room to room. But it is a very interesting thing, and it's getting worse, by the way. There's more to come on that. More to come on this incredible, the speed. And all over, we're seeing in Black and brown communities literally being taken over by developers. And
absolutely. And that sounds like the Sugar Hill area. I remember 409 Edgecombe at 155th had a penthouse, had a 24-hour doorman. Further up, there was 555 where Nat King Cole and I think Langston Hughes, and 357 Edgecombe, my old stomping grounds. But I want to share this with the family. On Monday, WNYC with Brian Lehrer had City Council Speaker Corey Johnson, I believe his name is, talking about 18 different bills that they're looking to put forward around housing and protecting housing. Now, I couldn't get through, as is typical with those programs that need to be addressed, but I'm not clear whether or how it deals with gentrification, so-called gentrification. But if I had gotten to one of the issues, because there's so many ways that they come at us. I know someone right now who is dealing with possibly being pushed out of their housing around players coming in and taking guardianship, whether they say your place is too cluttered. I mean, there's all kinds of things that they can come up with. And hello?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, something. So I didn't get through, but I want to follow up, and that's something that we need to look at. There's a book called The Retirement Nightmare, and it deals with a similar situation, but in another city where a psychologist's mother was a millionaire, and she lost most of her assets, being able to fight somebody taking over your life and taking over your housing. People like Rango, because I followed this for some time. People like Rango and those Negroes, you can't even get your foot in the door. So we shouldn't be surprised of what's happening in Harlem and, Bedside, East New York, et cetera, because they run away because it's so lucrative, and so many players involved. And I'll end my comment there. And thank you so much, you, Treese, and stay well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This issue is not just confined, as everybody knows, I think, or suspects, it's not confined just to New York City. It's all over the country. But of course, we're looking now at urban centers, as they were called, but cities, where the there's a re-stratification based on race as to who gets to live in the city, who gets to enjoy the perks of the city, who gets the access to those things that would essentially fill out your life. You know, you want to have a decent home. That is as basic as we've always held it to be. But it's changing and changing dramatically. John from New Jersey, hello, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Morning. Well, afternoon, actually.
Oh yes, it is. It is afternoon. These days with my age, I forget who I am, much less where I am all the time. But listen, I had a call. I tried to call yesterday, but I couldn't get through because you were talking about sympathy for the Bushes. Okay, the Bush family.
I wasn't talking about sympathy for the Bushes. I was saying that there is a way that we should behave.
I can't agree.
Irrespective of political persuasion. I could agree with
that.
You don't agree with that?
No, I have no sympathy, none whatsoever, and I'll tell you why. All of my sympathy has been drained out of me as a result of the conduct that the Bush family has perpetrated since I heard of them. But
here's the thing. Here's the point I was making. You're entitled to do that. You're entitled to feel that way, because believe us, I mean, there are so many reasons why you should feel that way. I was referring specifically to the president's conduct. Here's a head of state. He's attending a funeral of a former head of state, and his conduct was abominable.
Oh, you were talking about, well, he's just an example of the dire straits that the United States of America is in. I mean, it's unbelievable that we should have come to this point. It's been one disaster after another. I was an avid person in backing Barack Obama, but he turned out to be such a failure to me. I just can't even believe that. I don't believe any of these people anymore. They're all lying so much that they can't lie fast enough to cover up the last lie that they told. I mean, it's just remarkable. Our news organizations are not news organizations. They're dictated by the powers that be, and they have to read those papers they're given, that information they're given. Otherwise, they lose their jobs. Look at how many of our journalists that we had respect for, once they even thought of delivering the truth as far as news is concerned, they immediately lost their jobs. This slippery slope is now on a 90-degree angle on the way down, and it's just hard to live. Who the heck is calling me now? This is an important phone call. But in either case, I just have no sympathy. I have, for any of those people sitting.
I understand it. And, my thing, I share your view. I just don't know that I could be very sympathetic to Donald Trump. His behavior is so atrocious. And it is such an embarrassment to the nation. I mean, you go to a funeral, regardless of how one feels about, the former president, George H.W. Bush. It's his funeral. It's a state funeral. I mean, you at least shake hands with the other presidents who are there. And you just say, acknowledge them, Trump does not. And he acts like a sullen child, a
Well,
petulant,
he is.
sullen child. Yes, he is. But we shouldn't tolerate it. And
He would shake hands. Everybody would see how small his hands really are. That's why he would shake hands.
it's not his hands that trouble me, it's
brain,
his brain.
You know?
His brain is pretty small. But, it just was such a nasty, nasty thing. And it came so naturally to him and now his wife. Usually a husband and wife team, if one of them is doing something pretty stupid, the other kind of covers, if Trump is refusing to shake somebody's hand and acknowledge other former presidents who are there, well, you step in because you can see, it's being broadcast to the world. And he's looking exactly like what people say he is a jerk. But, it was the wrong thing to do, the wrong place to do it. And again, this has nothing to do with whether people like or did like George H.W. Bush or they like Trump. There's a way you behave. And this kind of stuff, it's just disgusting to the maximum now. And it leaves a bad impression worldwide. But again, people are beginning to separate. That this is Trump. This is not America behaving its way. This is Trump. Unfortunately, the head of state of the United States behaving consistently like a jerk and a person with major mental problems. Thanks for your call, John.
Well, we're tainted.
I'm sorry? Oh, we're gone. All right, Mookie from Connecticut, you're on the air. What are you freeing your mind of today?
Well, continuation, an addendum to yesterday's discussion. But I first wanted to make a statement about the Bush situation. I lived for the day when both Bush Sr. and Jr.'s presidential libraries are decommissioned and then recommissioned in the honor of all their victims. So that's enough said on that. I'm not even going to talk about Trump's behavior. But you launched me yesterday into a reverie about Harlem. I went to PS 125. I lived on the other side of my elementary school. I lived on the other side of Morningside Park on Morningside Drive, 121st off Amsterdam. I know I'm going to ramble a little bit. Lucky's Chinese Restaurant, the Blind Lady newsstand. I knew the magic words. I could walk into the butcher shop and say, "May I please have a piece of bologna?" Magic words. Every time it worked. The pizzeria, a couple of doors down. That's where I first saw pizza thrown into the air, thrown 4 or 5 feet into the air while making them. So, Morningside Park, I had my first fist fight there when I was about 9. A classmate picked a fight with me. I finished it. I was so angry, so surprised that this guy wanted to fight me or hit me. So Morningside Park, do you recall, Utrice, in I think around 1968, when there was an African-American caucus within the Columbia University system that took over some buildings, I think some dorms and offices, and I believe this was a reaction. Do you recall that?
I do remember that there was a lot. That was a time when campuses as a whole were extremely involved in advocating for community control of resources and against the injustice of racism.
Spot on, Utrice. The university was attempting to build a gymnasium right at the west end of Morningside Park, where it meets Amsterdam Avenue between 122nd and 124th, I think, which was the rear entrance to my elementary school. And the community rose up. I believe that the two issues are connected. The point here is Columbia University owned the apartment house I lived in, 110 Morningside Drive. I'm sure they own a lot of other properties then and still do. I'm quite certain that they're behind a lot of this simultaneous construction. But my worry is that Columbia University having permission from the city, from City Hall, to build a new gym complex there. I guess it's a bad prediction I'm going to make that they're going to start eating up Morningside Park. If the city had the gall to issue permission to the university in '68, then my beloved park is at risk.
Well, here's the thing that has not gotten very much attention, but it happens to be very important, especially in the world of real estate. And real estate is to New York what oil is to Texas. On the northern end, you have areas of domain granted to these schools and universities. Columbia University to the north and NYU to the south. They got whatever they wanted, whatever variance they needed, they got it in order to build these properties, including, of course, educational facilities, but also they had a lot of residential properties under their control. And it literally was the case that Columbia to the north controlled the housing stock. And NYU on the south controlled the housing stock on that end of the island. This was permitted, in fact, it was aided and abetted by the powers at City Hall. And these institutions wielded incredible influence. The members of their boards were politically connected. They got all kinds of variances waived. And so they emerged. They were the dominant force in real estate in Manhattan for a very, very long time. They still are. Right now, in the neighborhood where Columbia is, practically all of the public and private housing in some way or the other involves Columbia University having a say. I remember, in fact, it was a pretty gruesome story I wrote about people opposing Columbia University, and one of them was the husband of Nellie. Why am I forgetting Nellie's last name? She's on PRN and was on BAI. She was a housing activist. His head was delivered in a box to her. And that was to discourage his activism in behalf of the people who were living in housing that Columbia wanted back and under its control. So it was not just a philosophical fight. This was very nasty. So we haven't seen much movement away from that, but you're seeing the private institutions controlling a lot of public housing and public land, including the parks.
Yes. Wonder if they own the projects, if they're responsible for that.
Well, what is happening now with many of the projects is that the city very quietly has begun to privatize public housing. They're moving in, they're decommissioning many apartments that, of course, were set aside. This is public housing, after all. These were for the people. But Columbia University, in order to attract or to reattract students that left already. They've gone to the suburbs, or to attract a new group that could afford the tuition coming from abroad. They have to have some place to live. So the plan seems to be to decommission many of the public housing projects, or as many apartments as possible in the housing projects, and of course put them up for public occupancy, meaning Columbia University comes in again as a major force in influencing who gets access to that housing. It is happening gradually, but not just in Manhattan. We have this going on in Queens. You have it going on in Brooklyn, where the housing, public housing, is being gradually turned into private housing.
Now you've got me wondering, Utrice, at how much perhaps Riverside Church might be involved in this tendency, in this trend.
Well, I have to defend that because Riverside Church has maintained a very progressive stance all the way through, especially in the last couple of decades. It is truly a church dedicated to justice and equality and all of those things that we talk about, but they have not let down the people at all. Riverside Church was a church that Martin Luther King made his famous Why I'm Against the War in Vietnam speech. It is a different kind of institution, but make no mistake, within Harlem, you have many churches of many denominations, and they are being forced and they're being encouraged, quote unquote, by their central control systems to rethink the whole idea of remaining in Harlem, even though the congregations are shrinking. I have been involved with one church in particular. This was a church founded by the father of the Black press, and it's a wonderful church. And it's in disrepair. The congregation has diminished significantly, and there is intense pressure to sell the church, to sell the property, so that something else can be built there. It's smack dab at the corner of 141st Street and St. Nicholas. And it is a historic church. It's celebrating, I think, its 125th year. So I've been involved in some of the efforts to raise money to repair the church and to maintain it. To me, the significance of the church is that it was founded by John Russwurm, who was a clergyman, and the church actually began down in the Wall Street area where we had a lot of activism, African American activism. People don't understand the connection between blacks and Wall Street. We had one of the largest group suicides right there where WBAI's building is at 120 Wall Street. So the situation is very fluid. It is not coming across as even movement. It looks like nothing is happening. But there's a lot that is happening, but still there's a lot more that needs to happen in terms of community involvement, people standing up and saying this will not happen on our watch. We're not going to tolerate it. But I could tell you Columbia University is one of the big problems up there in terms of housing.
Well, to my knowledge, The gymnasium was never built because of community activity. And I do want to thank you for defending Riverside Church, because the comedian George Carlin and I both grew up in its shadow.
Oh, how about that? Well, thank you so much for calling in today. Thank you. Let's see. Who else is happening on our board here? Have you talked to Eric from Brooklyn yet?
Yes, hello.
Hello, Eric. You're on the air.
All right. Hi.
What are you freeing from your mind today?
Oh man, I'm freeing something that I would like people to consider. And this is, you often speak about it a lot. This is the idea of the law. You know, you talk about the law. And I have a different kind of mentality. I mean, I have a different mind on this image of the law. And I think it's what's used to keep people in check. And in my opinion, I don't think there is really a law or a system of laws. I think these are decisions based on interest, and they're not applicable. I mean, it's clear they're not applicable across the board. So you end up having most of the criminality, as in what Bush Sr., Jr., Obama, all these people represent in the government. And these are the people that are supposed to uphold the law, as we're supposed to understand it. I think if we were to shed ourselves of this idea of the law, it would be, I think that it's important for people to start thinking about these things differently, because it's the law that's keeping people subjugated and oppressed, and you look in the courtrooms, you look in all these, prison shows, and what happens. How can any of this be considered legal or lawful or justice? So the more you look at these situations, you come to understand it's just decisions that are made. And I'll give you an example. I was dropping some friends off at Penn Station one day, and the police love to park their cars where people, are supposed to drop off. And I finished dropping off my friends, and this police officer pulls up behind me. Oh, that was an illegal drop off. You were obstructing traffic. Endangerment of, passengers or whatever. So he gives me 3 tickets, right? I have a court date. To keep the long story short, I have a court date. And I go into court, and it happened to be the day before 9/11, the ceremonies of 9/11. So I go into court, and the judge, or, the I don't know what they call him, but the judge, they're not, I know they're not real judges, but anyway, he was pissed off that no cops were present. So there was all these people that were going to defend themselves, and none of the officers showed up because they were engaged in the process of 9/11 commemoration and all of that stuff. So there was a bunch of defendants and the judges and the clerks or whatever, and no police officers. So his decision that day was to teach the city of New York a lesson, because he was pissed off that he had to be there, conducting this, these adjournments of cases and, rescheduling and all of that. And it happens every year. So I go before the judge, and he looks at his assistant and looks at me and says, well, what do you think about this guy? What do you think we should do? Literally in front of me. And I have incredible disdain for the system already. But he's looking at his clerk, this young woman, And she's looking at me, and she looks at me, well, we should just dismiss his case. Just let him go. So that kind of situation just reaffirms in my mind the arbitrariness of this system and how detrimental it is to so many people. And the fact that it shouldn't be a system that we should be so obliged to. We shouldn't have so much respect for it, because I think it's ruining too many people's lives.
It may be ruining people's lives, but guess how they figure it out? They figure that traffic court, let's just say, traffic court is a revenue center. It has nothing to do with justice or a fair trial or a fair hearing. It's a moneymaker. Somebody is going to have to pay some money to get out of there on that particular day when the case is called. And that's why I say the Supreme Court, it's not that it's not important, but in the scheme of things, it pales in comparison to the routine injustices that are done every single day in the lower courts. When you take traffic court, the constant refrain in traffic court is pay on the way out. Exactly. Pay on the way out, right? So it is a revenue collector for the city. So in order for the city to collect revenue from that particular court, people have to be found guilty. There's no room there to actually argue a case. There's no room there for individual justice. It's pay on the way out. This is not a big deal. You got caught parking or standing at a fire hydrant, pay on the way out. Mm-hmm. And that generates tens of billions of dollars a year for the city.
I'm telling that story because, for me, that is replicated in every other court, in the criminal courts. You're sending these people who really have no defense, no ability to defend themselves unless they have tons of money. And you send them to these incredible, sentences in jail where now they're forced to be labor for companies. So they're also a revenue stream. They're making money for this system. And I say this because, to me, it's important for people to start changing their ideas about the system that they're living in and what it's really about. And we like to talk about Trump, but I think he's a perfect reflection of this system. And I keep challenging people to look at themselves or look at the situation that we're in. How can we? You look at the Obama years and Libya. You look at Bush and a small place like Panama. The horrors that they delivered to these people. And we talk about Trump as something new. And I think that unless we change this mentality of these individuals being either good, and we start looking at what they're actually about, what they've actually done, and who's doing these things. I keep repeating, who's doing it? It's not Trump and his kids. It's the American kids. So Americans love to separate themselves from Trump. But how can you separate yourselves from Trump when you lend the people that you've created, that you've taught, that you've brought up, you lend them to these maniacs and you have them marauding all over the world, killing people, engaging in all kinds of, disasters. And then we look at these leaders, Trump is such a, he's not reflective of the American people. I think that needs to change. And if people will come to realize that, wait a minute, perhaps this is actually what we are. He's a perfect reflection of what this country has become and what it's been engaged in forever. Like, you could talk about Shays' Rebellion, right after the revolution. And the fact that the people who were doing the fighting have never benefited. It's always the oligarchy. They send your kids out to fight. And it's so interesting that at that point, those people realized that, wait a minute, you're taxing us, but we didn't want the fight. You know, we fought to preserve what you have, and you said taxation without representation, and now you become the people who are taxing us, and we reject it, and they fought. And we are here being taxed without representation. We allowing ourselves and our children to be sent all over the world, you know, and when they return, they're once again our problem, and these people are running away with the bank. So if we reject the system that they've created, perhaps we could, you know, go for something better.
Well, you know, what I like about your call is that you're illustrating what happens when you begin to think. You're beginning to put pieces together. You're beginning to see a picture. Unfortunately, not enough people have gone through or are going through that process of inquiry. But they will have to at some point, because it will become unavoidable. They will have to do it because it would be critically linked to their survival. But that's what I like about your call. I'm hearing a person putting pieces together and getting the right picture. You're getting the picture. But you're investing in the business of inquiry. What is going on here? What am I looking at here? How you link your experience with a traffic ticket to systems of control. That's incredible. So I thank you for illustrating that point, and I encourage you to continue. And I encourage those listening to embark on a similar journey. This is why I think the information that comes out of a milieu like this, where we're talking to each other, we're also instructing each other, we're also sharing with each other how to fight back, how to affirm your rights, how to understand how systems work. Thanks so much, Eric, for your instruction today. Great job. Thank you. Willie from Brooklyn, you're on the air. Oh, we lost Willie. Ali from New York, you're on the air.
Hi, Therese. How are you doing?
Okay. How are you, Ali?
I'm doing okay, hanging in. And I just wanted to say hello to the PRN audience. And I hope that you like my call, too.
I will like your call.
Okay. Being that you were talking about housing, my main point is going to be about housing, but I just wanted to mention something about Trump, because I think it was either yesterday or the day before. I know that I just listened to your program. I didn't listen live, but I listened to your program and download the program. And you were talking about what Trump did at the funeral at the church and his behavior. But I always say this. We have known about his behavior right from the beginning when he pushed the prime minister, I think it was from Montenegro, and he kept going. That we should not be surprised about the man. I'm sorry. We should not be surprised of his behavior. That was the first thing that he did that we thought it was like an incredible thing about a president doing that. So I just wanted to put that out there. That's why whatever he does, it doesn't really, I'm surprised. But I wanted to go back to... You
already got the information that you need from that thing, is what you're saying, from the summit.
Yes, you put it, it's a better way to put it, yes. So it's not a surprise there. But I wanted to go back to this gentrification and housing. As you know, I put together a housing conference almost 2 years ago. I met one of the audience who came to the conference was Julie, that she easily calls up, and that I met Julie in that conference. But I just wanted to say this: when we're talking about about what happened in this country, what is happening. This is what you call globalization. And when we talk about globalization, we're not talking about only about outsourcing jobs, austerity measures all around the world. We're talking about everything is global. It's like one government transferring everything all over the place. And the reason that I'm saying that this problem with gentrification is global is because one of the last 3 cities that I have been in, one was Baja California. I went to a place in Baja California. It is in, as you know, it's the peninsula that is Mexico. And when I went there, I saw gentrification in a town called, in an area called Todos Santos, in that area. I also went to Rotterdam, the same thing, where they used to have factories, and they still have people of color in that area that you know that it was very pushed to the side from the center of the city. You go there now, and they have these fancy gourmet places, restaurants, pushing people out. I also, one of my last trips was to Halifax, to Nova Scotia. I just went there in August. In Nova Scotia, people don't know, but in Halifax, they have black people that they were pushed from United States in the 17, I forgot it exactly, but it was 1700s, and they went into Nova Scotia. That area, the area where these people, they have been born, and generation of them have been born, that area, if you go there, the gentrification is like you're looking at Brooklyn and you're looking at New York City. It's the same. I took a video, because it's like when you go there, you can't believe it. Again, it's taking the black people out of those areas. It's a very small area that they have, and they don't know where these people, they're going to go, especially the housing. They have public housing like here, and those public housing eventually is going to be sold to the private corporations. So I don't know where these black people from Halifax, they're going to go to. It's a very small area. And that's what I'm saying. This is not only New York City. This is a global thing. It's like one government sitting down with all the government, and it's one person, one group is the head, and they say we're going to transfer this all over the place. And this is it. And one of the last things that I wanted to say is about, and you're probably aware of this building. There used to be a building in 116th Street and Central Park West. I used to call that building the castle, because it's a castle. It was a castle. It looked like a castle. I think years ago it used to be a nursing home. That building was closed since the 70s. That building was closed down. Do you know, if you go there, they left the facade of the castle. You could even see. I took picture before they constructed it. That building, if you go there, it's a high-rise luxury building. As a matter of fact, it's almost like gated. Before you even drive it in, it's gated. It's right on 116th Street and Central Park West. This is what is going on in Manhattan. But you mentioned when you were talking about this, that they have held these properties for decades until it was the right time to develop. This is what they have done. And the last thing I wanted to say is Nellie Bailey. Nellie Bailey was one of the speakers.
Nellie Bailey was the last name. I couldn't recall it. Yes.
Yeah, you couldn't remember the name, but she was one of the speakers on that conference, on the housing conference. And
now,
this is what I wanted.
People would be shocked at what I just said about her husband, who was attacked mysteriously when they were trying to, when Columbia University was moving in on tenants in buildings that it wanted to take over, and the tenants were resisting. They blamed Nellie's husband for the agitation, and he turned up dead. His I don't want to be graphic about it, but he was decapitated and his head was sent to his wife. You would never think that this could possibly happen in New York City. But this is how fierce the housing issue is. There are people who are actually paying with their lives for trying to stand with tenants and to support them. This is a big fight, and they're taking it very seriously on the other side. The death threats, people who have disappeared, all kinds of extreme irregularities. And to my knowledge, Ali, I don't think that case was ever solved.
No, because I talked to somebody who actually has a show on WBAI, and he was the person who actually told me. And he actually told me the head was sent to her, but where the other pieces they were found. He actually was the one. But before I go, I also wanted to tell you that, because it was mentioned about, you were talking about Colombia. I don't live there. Now I live on the east side, but I was living a year and a half ago on 90th Street and on the west side. And they have some housing there. They have some building, the 4 building that belong to NYCHA. The word about 10 years ago was that the city, very secretive, has sold those NYCHA buildings to the school across the street, which is Trinity. You know that Trinity, that is special private school, that is a $40,000 a year private school. And this is what the people are saying, that the Trinity actually, even though it hasn't come out, a lot of people believe that those buildings, those NYCHA buildings, have been sold to the Trinity School. I just wanted to put that out there. But this is how
NYCHA refers to the New York City Housing Authority, which is the authority that basically controls and regulates public housing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Good to hear from you today. Willie from Brooklyn, you're back.
Good afternoon to my families. PRN.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, my beloved sister. Last week, Friday. Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Oh, yeah. Last Friday, last Friday's program, my blood ran chilly because I now got the answer to why you, as one of the best journalists inside the United States, I'm a historian.
Oh, Lord.
No, I really be huge. I don't speak on things I don't know. I remember when you used to be at BI, you had Earl Caldwell and Clinton Riley. And both of them, these are two brilliant brothers. And you had them like Muhammad Ali would have any boxer up against a rope. So I know when I say what I'm saying from a historical perspective. And I don't even listen to the mainstream media. It's you and Gary Null and the people in PRN. And when you said that this joker, I have more respect for Donald Trump than this man, Abraham Foxman from B'nai B'rith, because the way you put him in his place, in his rightful place. And now I could understand why you're not making real money across America, because this is the way these people operate. And it's now very clear to me. And their control of people in the United States, of progressive and good people in the United States, is coming to a closure. The day of controlling this country is over. All right? That's all I had to say.
That's it? Well, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Lee, for your call today. I appreciate you calling in and sharing your ideas and your thoughts with us today. I appreciate everybody calling in and sharing your ideas and their thoughts. I just want to say this, not as, for self-congratulation, but I think whether you're conscious of it or not, programs like this program, programs are needed to bring people together. And just think, it doesn't have to have any big objective. No, it's not a big deal. It's the little thing that counts of connecting people together, and we having a chat, we sharing ideas, we sharing thoughts. And that comment today by Eric from Brooklyn is illustrative of the same thing that I'm talking about, that what has harmed us a lot is just we just not connecting. We're not talking to each other. We don't know where we're at. And in the space of an hour, we can connect people and their ideas, and most importantly, respect them enough to give them the space to say what they have to say. You don't have to agree. We don't have to agree with each other. But we at least have the ability to present our ideas, because in the end, our ideas have merit and they ought to be respected. Thank you so much. Have yourselves a great weekend surrounded by people who bring positive dimension to your life. We see each other Monday. Bye-bye.